Praise Yahweh, saints. I want to give my testimony about how Yahweh brought me to the church. I was 20 years old whenever I came this way. I was a very, very messed up and depressed person, very sad, a drug addict. I was not born and raised in the faith. I didn't know what was right. I even doubted that there was a God at all. I remember that I did not know if God was real, and people would be so upset with me whenever I would try to tell them that I just wasn't sure if God was real or not, and they would always try to convince me that he was real. But the same people that were trying to convince me of his existence were doing all the same sinful things that I was doing with me. And but I had read the Bible and knew that you weren't supposed to do those things according to the scriptures. And I would always tell them, "You're doing the same thing as me. I can't take you seriously." And I've mocked God. I would cuss him out. I was very sad because my father was an alcoholic, and my mom and my dad, they always fought. They fought all the time. My dad would come home drunk. He was a salesperson, so he would take his clients. He was a steel salesman, so he would take his clients out to bars all the time trying to make deals. And he had a cooler of beer behind his passenger seat, so he could lean back and get one at all times. Driving drunk, he also had a cooler in his trunk, and I would steal beers out of his trunk, and I was getting drunk at the ages of like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I didn't know Yahweh at all, and I was just hoping. Whenever we didn't even go to church. My dad was a Baptist, and my mom, she had previously been to a church around 78. I was born in 1976. She went to a church where they taught in the name of Yeshua, and she tried to get my dad and me and my big brother Jeff to start, going to church and getting serious about serving the Lord as best as she knew. She really didn't know the truth. She didn't have a church that had apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, the fivefold ministry. She did not know. But she tried to get us started serving Yahweh. They knew Yahweh at that church. They called God Yahweh. But my dad wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I was too young to know anything about all of this. But it explains my memories as a child of them always fighting, and my mom seeming to have a lot of morals, a lot of good morals that she probably learned from that church. But my dad said, "We're celebrating Christmas. We're not doing all that stuff that you're saying that we have to do to be saved. It doesn't take all that." And so he fought her and fought her and fought her until she caved in, and she went back to everything. And my mom was really worldly, and her favorite radio station was K104, and I always listened to Prince and The Time and all these bands, and she had a whole bunch of records, the small ones, the big ones, and she loved music, so I was always listening to music, and because of all that worldly music that I heard all the time, that became my main obsession. I was obsessed with music. I listened to all different kinds of music, oldies, 60s, folk rock and classic rock in the 70s, and even in the 80s. It's just the power rock and all of that, and then whenever I was in the 80s, the mid to late 80s, I started getting into all the British rock bands, both old ones like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin and all of them, and then of course Jimi Hendrix and all those bands. And then in the 80s, the mid 80s, I got introduced to alternative rock and alternative music, and so I was listening to all those kind of bands like, the Smiths, Morrissey, and Depeche Mode. Music was everything to me. And of course, as I continued to get older, 10, 11, 12, 13, it began to be all about music and girls. And then it wasn't too much longer, my brother had introduced me, and he didn't know what he got himself into, because somebody showed him how to inhale chemicals to get high, and he came home and he showed me how to do it. And then after that, I was huffing all of our household chemicals, and he would come home from school, and he had a lot of after-school activities because my big brother was super popular. He was the sophomore class president. But he would come home and find me passed out, face down on the floor. I used to wear contact lenses when I was a kid, but I would pass out, face down on the floor, eyes wide open, and my contacts dried to the ground because my eyes were on the carpet, wide open, passed out, because those chemicals were so damaging to my brain cells. And it set me back so far in my maturity level that I was so immature. I didn't know how to handle anything. My emotions were haywire. And I was so depressed. I didn't know what to do about my mom and dad fighting all the time. And so the music, the drugs, and affection from girls, and the rock and roll, and all of those things, I became the people. They talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was my everything. It was my unholy trinity, and I thought it was the answer to everything. So I just absorbed myself into all that. And so of course all the crazy bands kept coming out, and I would just immerse myself into all of that. But what happened was I started getting sick from doing all those drugs, from smoking, chain smoking, 2, 3, 4, 5 packs a day, and listening to music that had very negative messages, talking about committing suicide, and of course being in relationships with women that were not my wife. I didn't have getting married on my mind, so I was just destroying myself and getting my own heart broken and ripped up unnecessarily. So by that time, Yahweh started bringing me down, and all my friends, they seemed like they were just having the greatest of times, but I was getting so depressed and sad. There was this one time, I only did crystal meth one time. I was smoking weed, eating mushrooms, and taking acid, and that was my favorite stuff to do. But I did meth with the lead singer of the band that I was in, one time, and I stayed up for a day or so, and I went home, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I heard the words, "You are the son of Satan," and it just scared me, because I'd always said I didn't know if God was real, and I'd always told people I don't know. But whenever those words came to my mind, even if it was me saying it to myself, it still scared me to death. And then there was another time I was in the middle room in my old house on Linda Lane, and I was looking in a mirror, and the words, whenever I heard "You're the son of Satan," I was looking in a mirror. And so I was getting to the point where I couldn't look at myself in a mirror. At this time, the second time, I was looking in the mirror, and I was looking at myself in the face, and the words, "You're going to die," come to my mind. And I'm just sitting there looking at myself, troubled, just so disturbed. And then these words, "You're going to die, and you don't know." And it's hard I don't know if you can even get the effect that me saying these words, it's not like the way it was when those words came to me. They had power. It said, "You're going to die, and you don't even know what's going to happen to you. You don't know if you're just going to cease to exist. You don't know if everything they've been saying about life after death, if there's no hope for you and you're lost for eternity." And it just floored me, and I was scared to death. So I was buying $50 worth of weed like every night or every other day, because I was a delivery driver, and I would take all of my tip money, and I was making good tip money. I was a delivery driver for KFC. And I would take all that money, go to the person, buy a 50 sack of weed, and then I was so paranoid that I would smoke the whole thing that night, so I wouldn't have to bring any home and my mom catch me with weed. So I was waking up every morning around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, sleeping all morning, and when I would wake up, I would just stare at the ceiling, and I was burning my mind out. I was baking myself. This marijuana I felt like I was deleting me. I was erasing myself. And I was getting less. I used to be so nice and fun loving, and everybody liked me because I was so nice, but I was just turning into an ugly person. All my innocency was being taken away from me, and I was starting to hate myself more and more and more. So I was so sad and desperate. I cried to my mother and told her that I was so sad and depressed and I needed help. And she said, "Well, I need to turn you and take you to a drug rehab, like a halfway house, a place where you go, a clinic." And she was like, "We're going to put you in a Christian one." And I'm like, "Mom, why you want to put me in a Christian one? I don't even believe in God." And saints, you should have the look on her face whenever she realized it was a shock to her. She realized that I didn't believe in God. She was shocked. I mean, it hit her that she was not a good example for me. She was devastated because she had an opportunity to live for God as best as she could. And I believe that Yahweh would have brought her to the church. And the truth of the matter is, saints, Yahweh has brought my mom to the church. She's just still fighting it. But she was devastated that she had failed me as a mother, that I didn't believe in God. She knew it was because of her. And but anyway, I went to this so-called Christian rehab clinic, and I was there for, I think, 2 months. I turned myself in, and I met even worse people there. I mean, they were seriously disturbed folks. And so whenever I got out of the rehab, and it was horrible, they introduced me to like a whole bunch of meditation and stuff, and I actually got more devils. I had also allowed this one person to like do some kind of guided meditation, and while I was in the middle of it, I had my eyes closed, and my arms pinned behind me, and I was stuck in this horribly contorted position, and that there was a demon. I think I was being possessed, and I had no control of my body, and I was so scared to death because I had my eyes closed. I was afraid to open my eyes, and I couldn't control myself, and I was totally contorted. My arms were pinned in crazy ways, and it hurt so bad. I've been through a lot, saints. And Yahweh had to do all of that to bring me down, because I used to mock churches, and I made fun of God and made fun of Christians. I said it's just a way for people to try to control the masses, and that's all I had. Like it was the man trying to get you with Christianity, like they came up with a perfect religion to control the masses, and that's how I thought about it. But I was so devastated after I got out of the rehab. I started partying with the people that I met in rehab, and that's when I really went down even further. And I remember I was at this party, and I went over to these people's houses, and I was sitting around. I just got out of rehab. I was with my old best friend, Eric Pashilk, who has since died of a heroin overdose. I found out about it after I'd come to church, and I was at a restaurant, and my old friend's brother, who had also died of a heroin overdose, told me, "You haven't heard that Eric died of a heroin overdose?" So I know where I would be, saints. I know exactly where I would be if I had not come to the church. So I was at this party, and I was with Eric, and because it was my birthday, we smoked some weed in the bathroom. And I don't know if there was something in that weed or what, or just because I hadn't had any in such a long time, because I had not had any since I got out of the drug rehab for 2 months. In 2 weeks or less, I ruined the whole rehab, detoxing. I got so high at that party, I was sitting in a chair, and I looked around, and I started looking at all of the people in the room. And I now know it was Yahweh who was speaking to me and said, "Look at these people. They're just like cattle. Look at them being corralled here and there." And I looked at them, and the people looked like beasts. It was very strange. I saw human beings as beasts, as cattle. And I was so disturbed and so troubled that I was like, "Take me home. I feel horrible. I need to go home." And all my friends didn't know what to do with me. I wasn't any fun anymore. I went home, and I was so desperate. My ex-girlfriend's dad, who I was still friends with, invited me to come to this church. And so I said, "Well, I'm so desperate, I guess I'll give Jesus a shot." Because I didn't believe. I was agnostic. It wasn't that I said there is no God. I said I don't know. And I stayed that way for a long time. But whenever I went to this church, I was so desperate. I prayed the sinner's prayer. I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, and then immediately afterwards, I started debating with them about everything, because I was so full of doubt about everything. And boy, I wore these people out. I got rebuked in their Bible study because my mom believed that we were supposed to keep the Sabbath and the food laws and all this and that. So I'm debating with them about that. And they were so upset with me. And then I was also part of this church called Grace Community Church. That's where I got in debates with folks. And then also I was in another church called God's Place, which was a church with a rock club on the back, which was Christian rock. And I saw that they had women preachers. And whenever I first prayed that sinner's prayer, yada yada yada, I started reading the Bible like a madman, and I actually haven't stopped. I'm still reading the Bible like there's no tomorrow, and it's paying off because I'm in the true church being taught by an apostle. if I didn't have that, it would be very dangerous for me to be reading the Bible. It's dangerous because the devil can lie to you about it. But I started reading the Bible. So I read 1 Timothy 2 when it talks about modest apparel. I read where it was talking about women preachers. I read in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 when it talked about the head covering. And I just started accruing question after question after question. So I started questioning the people at Grace Community Church. I started questioning the people at God's Place. And the devil whenever I started questioning the people at God's Place about long hair, being ashamed for a man to have long hair, and the main preacher man had long hair, and the youth pastor had a mohawk. And whenever I asked and was questioning about it, the devil told them to try to tell me they thought I was a prophet, to try to bribe me to shut up and quit debating with them about everything. So and then there was some girl that, because I had quit committing fornication, I had stopped watching TV, I had stopped listening to worldly music. I was desperate. Everything I loved, I said, I got to give this stuff up. I mean, the music I was playing for Jesus was worldly, but I knew that all the bad messages from my old favorite bands like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Stone Temple Pilots and all those groups, the message was so negative. I'm like, I can't do this Christian thing and keep on doing that, because my flesh wants to go back and listen to all that stuff. And I know that's what got me in trouble. It was like nature, common sense told me that's what was getting me in trouble. So I was working at Albertsons. First, I was a night stalker, but because I was such a wreck, I couldn't keep that night stalking job because I was so depressed and lazy, and wasn't trying to be lazy. I really wasn't. I was just so disturbed. I couldn't work fast because I would bust out crying and have fits of depression and weeping in the middle of my shift, and I couldn't move fast enough, and everything was giving me anxiety. I was having anxiety attacks. It was horrible. And so to make things even worse, now I don't even feel like a man, because the guy in charge of the Night Stalkers told me I wasn't good enough to be a Night Stalker, and if I wanted to keep the job, I had to be a courtesy clerk, bagging groceries at 19 years old. And so I had to keep my job, so I became a bagger. And I was going, at that time, I was starting to go bald. And I had, at the time, I had a mohawk that was right to here, like a samurai, and I had it tied up in the back like a samurai warrior. And they told me, if you go to be a bagger on first shift, you're going to be in front of the people. That's how long ago this was, where there were still like standards and like codes of what you couldn't have your hair like. There was 1997. 96 and 97. So they told me I had to either wear this big, ugly, retarded, that I probably shouldn't say that, but I guess I'm all in my old self, goofy looking Kroger's hat, which was way too big and weird looking on my head, or I could cut my hair. So I shaved my head and got rid of my long hair. And my mom had kicked me out, so my dad came into my life just briefly to get me in a efficiency apartment over there off of Cooper Street, real close over to Albertsons where I worked. And so at Albertsons is where I met Pastor Bibbs. And I was trying to witness to this man, and he was just mocking me at every turn. He was somebody who just didn't take anything seriously. And he said that he was a god. His name was Dave Hagenstein. But anyway, he would just mess around with me. And I was trying to help Dave Hagenstein because I had this spirit where I thought that I had to help people. And so I was trying to convince him, and then Pastor Bibbs walked in, and at the time he was just a brother in the church, and his name, I called him Will. And I said, there's something wrong with Dave, right? We're trying to help him. He needs to come and see the light, right? And Pastor Bibbs was like, you're both wrong, and you need to come to the church that I'm at, where the true apostles sent by God, they're true preachers. God actually speaks to, at the time it was Prophet Washington, because Apostle Washington was still going by the title of prophet. And so once again, he invited me, and I was once again in this position where I was like, if I don't come and visit this church, I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror anymore, because I got to be sincere. I have to be for real. So I went, and I heard the message, and it was the most powerful thing I had ever heard in my entire life. And when I heard it at the end of service, I stood up and said, I accept this teaching. Baptize me. It was February 4th, 1997, and it was like 20 degrees outside. And so we went out, and they baptized me in Lake Grand Prairie, and it was like, felt like little knives were going in your feet. It was so cold, but I did not care. I had to get my sins remitted. I heard the gospel. I believed in God. I repented. I believed in his son. And I had so many questions, and still so many things I needed to know. And it's been 23 years since then. And Yahweh has been so merciful unto me. His covenant with his son Yeshua, and the promise that he made that if we would be in his son Yeshua, he would lead us and guide us into all truth. He would be merciful unto us. He would keep us. He would save us. He would help us. He wouldn't give up on us. Even when we would pray, the Spirit bears our infirmities, and he kept me. And he's given me a beautiful, wonderful wife and 3 wonderful, lovely children. And Yahweh used my wife and children to continue to shape me and mold me and save me. And thanking Yahweh, of course, for Apostle Washington and Prophet Standifer especially, because they've always been there for me. They put up with me. They put up with me. And I was so difficult to be around. I was so troubled, all the drugs, all the depression, everything. They spent time with me. And all you saints that took out time with me and suffered me, I'm so thankful. It's been a struggle, because I fought to keep my own ways, even after 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Yahweh was just stripping me of myself. And but now I'm in a place where I'm getting so stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and I have got my mind made up, and I can see now. I can see. And I'm so thankful to be in the church. I've had so many hard days where I was going to give up. I mean, I would tell myself I was going to give up. I would tell myself, just leave. Because it's hard for the flesh to be in the church when you don't have your mind made up to be fully obedient. But I thank Yahweh that he is still, even to this day, I know he's still working on me, and every day is just getting better and better and better. Even when I get corrected and get rebuked, now it's such a blessing, because after I've learned how to accept what Yahweh has to say when he corrects me, and it's just like more weight is taken off of me and more light is shining. And so I thank Yahweh for this opportunity to give my testimony of how I came to the church and how Yahweh is giving me the victory over all things. Love you so much, saints. Yahweh bless y'all and keep you in the name of Yeshua Messiah. Peace be.